yeah, so I'm going to kind of talk a little bit about, I don't know, some topic of my choosing. At different panels, I've talked about how to draw hands, how to draw action figure, dynamic figures. If you go online and search YouTube, you'll find some of that stuff. And so, in a weird way, over the past couple of years, I've been kind of doing an online course through all these different panels of different things to draw. I thought today maybe I would work on how to draw the female figure, and really kind of walk through that. And then I'll probably do a couple sketches of like Harlequin and maybe Supergirl, whatever. So, also, while I'm drawing, I can kind of draw and talk, so maybe I'll start taking some questions from the audience. But I thought, first of all, if any of you guys don't know who I am, I'm Jim Lee. I'm co-publisher, of DC Comics, and I also draw Superman Unchained. For some reason, there was something online where it said the book was canceled, but really the solicitations were canceled. The book is still coming out. There's 3 issues left. The next issue comes out, I believe, next Wednesday, right? I think. And then the 8th issue comes out in July, August, and then the last issue comes out in September. The last issue is double-sized, so I'm working on issue 8 right now. And yeah, so you can't always believe what you read online. So anyway, so I wanted to start by, I've been drawing comics now for about 27 years. And it's interesting, back in the day when I started, there was no internet. And it really talks about looking at the totality of the figure and not so much the muscles per se. So I kind of know the muscle groups, but I don't really overly focus on what's a pec and what's a deltoid and what's a bicep. I mean, I know where they are, but that's less important to me than the overall shape of something, right? So maybe I'll take out some tools here. So when talking about the female form, generally people think of the hourglass shape. So if this is going to be Harlequin, and I'm going to draw the original costume just because it's easier for me to do from memory. Right, so if that's the headline, the head, the silhouette of the head, that's the chin, that's the ligaments of the neck, right? And then you have that, and then you have this other thingamajig here. Now, there's again the neck bone, or it's connected to the collarbone. There's no neck bone, but this neck ligament goes here. And like I said, I'm not really great on the names, but I do know there's a divot here. We all have this kind of the collarbone here. And that's an important line because from the collarbone it goes to the top of the shoulder. So you can even see with that hand, I just kind of get a very basic shape. I'm going to go in there and add the detail later. It's less critical, but I'm really looking at these outside lines. But in my mind, I'm also thinking about the shapes in between. That's really what George Bridgman taught, is that I don't know all the tricep muscles that go up in here, but I do want to retain that kind of round shape, right? And that arm kind of fits into that socket, and this is your pec muscle, right? And so you can see I'm sort of still following down to, does that make sense? Now here's where that pelvis comes into play. This is the high point of the pelvic bone here, and it comes down, and then the leg comes out of that slot that we drew here. Okay, kind of running out of space, but so here's the length of this leg here, that thigh, and I'll put it over here, and so you kind of know that this thigh is about this long. Does she have boots, or does it? There's something down here, right? Has anyone cosplayed as Harlequin here? Anyone? No. You're in a different costume though. Does she wear boots? She has something on her heels, right?
They're like little flaps.
Like Robin boots. Right, okay. Right. Thank you. There should be accreditation for being co-publisher DC comics. We should know this kind of stuff. It's so embarrassing. Anyway, so here's where that hourglass shape comes in, right? It pinches in at the hips, comes out. She's got a little bit of a boyish figure because she's a little slender. And then I know that with this hand up, you're going to see the underside of this palm. So in perspective, I could almost Greek it out like that. See that? That's this part here. That's the top part of the fingers here. And the elbow comes out here. And it just kind of fits in there. Right? Maybe a little bit longer. And you can see I'm kind of adjusting it on the fly. I haven't been drawing for about a week, so I'm learning as I'm doing this. Okay, here's the foot. And if you notice, I don't really worry too much about the feet. The thing about feet and hands is you can kind of just place them and then attach them to the rest of the body. So, like for instance, if you're going to draw something in perspective, like a hand coming out at you, sometimes I'll just draw the hand first, right? And just kind of, did it wrong. Let's say you draw the face, and then I'll just draw the hand, right? There's the shoulder. And sometimes I'll just draw the hand first, because you know that hand has to connect up to the body. And so in a way, you save yourself the aggravation of trying to figure out how this works. Just put the head and the hand, and then just put the rest in between. Does that make sense? And if you end up with a hand too far away from the head, you're drawing Mr. Fantastic. Right? Anyway. That's how the character's probably created, right? Jack Kirby. He's probably a regular guy, no powers, just a scientist, and drew the hand too far away and said, "No, he stretches." Anyway, okay, so I drew the foot, and if you notice, like the ankle would be here, that foot would be really short, so, but I like the placement of the foot, so I know that the heel is down here, so I'm going to basically extend that down here. It doesn't look so nice in the inks, but let me think. This side is black, right? This side is black, so that side is black. Oh my god, this is so complicated. No wonder we changed the costume. Shoot. Black, black. All right, I have no idea. Anyone have a connection that can Google this real quick for me? All right, great. Do the hammer? Okay. You could be a great editor. I don't have the full script for it. Why don't you just draw the pages that we gave you and worry about the other stuff later? That's the new costume, but okay, so that helps. All right. Right, so this is black, black, black. So this is black. This is red. That doesn't help. If it were black, I could just black it out. I'll use white out. Anyway, so she's sitting on this chair, but now I'm thinking in my head. I'm trying to save this sketch real quick. There's these things that they put on the back of elephants that people ride on. Right, so I'm going to make it kind of this improvised thing that has. Oh, great, right, thank you. All right. Yes, thank you for the contribution. You have a passcode? Do you have any good pictures on this, by chance? Oh, wait, I don't even know what she's doing. So she's holding the hammer in a very different way. Anyway, I'll have to figure that out later. All right, so you got this. Okay, so you gotta have to have this.
Oh no!
I don't know where this like goes. Where does that go? I'm gonna put it right here. Great thing about Batman is there's a lot of shadows. You'll see why they're so useful. Okay, so I'm just basically kind of improvising kind of a sketch. He's looking a little concerned because this is not what he signed up for. Screwed it up, so she's got to basically. No, yeah. I'm just going to turn it this way. All right. So once you have kind of like the basic shapes like this, most of the drawing is really done, right? I mean, you really have. Is there a way to? That's as good as gets. Right. So once I get to this point, I feel pretty comfortable with it. I've got the shapes down. Her head looks a little bit big, but it's Harlequin. The eyes go here, nose goes there, mouth goes here, right? We all know that, right? We all look at ourselves in the mirror, we know. You have reference every day, look at yourself. So there are the eyes. Usually start with the eyes because they show the expression, the emotion. So it's really critical that you nail that and get them in the right spot. She has kind of a pert little nose here like this. And that kind of maniacal smile. Okay. And then she's got this next piece here. So if I were drawing this in pencil, I would be erasing as I went along, as I kind of basically draw this structure. I'm going to erase some of that line work. Right? Do that. You'll see sometimes I do these very kind of quick lines like that, and that's basically to create a gradient. And a gradient is when you go from black to white. So if you have, it's kind of what cross-hatching is, so if you have light cross-hatching and then it can get denser, right? It's just creating, because we don't have the ability to create gray tones using ink. And so we use cross-hatching as a way, if you kind of squint at that, it's a kind of a light gray to a dark gray to a solid black. Right? So you can do that a number of ways. You can either crosshatch, right? Or you can do it like this. So that's what I'm doing. It just creates a little more variation. So this is a light gray and it goes to a dark black here. Okay? And same thing where maybe I'm going from this dark black here to a lighter shade gray. So you see as I add element after element, it starts to feel a little more finished, a little more solid. And I like to kind of jump around because I don't want to get too invested in one area, finish it off, and then realize, you know what, I need to move that entire head over a quarter of an inch, which happens sometimes. And so I want to just make sure as I'm kind of going along, I'm always checking things against each other. And she really should have had a whip here, I think. Anyway, okay. So that's the brow of Batman, casts a shadow. This area casts a shadow across the nose. This plane right here is flat against your face. So if there's a light source behind it, it's dark. And then we can make the rest of this all black. The nose is going to cast a shadow across the upper lip. He's got that perpetual Batman scowl, right? His ears right there. He'll cast a shadow against the side of his head. And he starts to see his figure kind of come together, right? Okay, worked. All right. I know there's some other things up here. This is incorrect reference. It's slightly incorrect. It's all right. Everyone kind of does it differently anyway. This is fine. I'm good. Oh, you're pulling up my own reference to embarrass me. All right, thank you. Batman Hush. I did this over 10 years ago, sir. And I remember all that. It doesn't look as good. All right, so I've got enough there to kind of finish this off. I know this is black. Thing is, she's wearing a costume. It's skin tight, but it, I almost suggest that it's cloth. And so cloth will basically create wrinkles wherever it bends. So at the joints, at the shoulder joints, and also if you bend in the middle of the figure, you're going to get some lines here like that. And so you want to basically show that. And with this kind of material, it's like spandex or something, so it's kind of shiny black, and so it'll have a rim light, right, an edge light that basically makes it look like it's reflecting a light source next to it. Okay. All right, so then that's all black. So it's actually really easy. You can just black out all the inner shapes there, the muscles, and then just keep the rim light on the edges to suggest the light bouncing off the black costume itself. So here, this other hand that I kind of Greeked out before, again, don't get too concerned about where all the fingers go. Just know that there are knuckles across this ridge here. So you draw 1, 2, 3, 4 knuckles. Yeah, that's enough. And maybe a little shadow of the fingers underneath, but it's not super critical. Because again, most people do not go and look at that kind of detail. They're looking at the whole drawing, the gist of it. Okay? And draw the eyes in, but okay. So I've got this, and to make it go faster, I've got some ink and a brush. It's kind of a funky brush. It's not the one I brought. I didn't bring a brush, but let's see if I can get some stuff here done. Start with the easy part, which is Batman. I know that he's mostly going to be in shadow. So I'm just going to basically come in and see, you kind of feather that black into the gray shapes there. And again, it's like a drape that falls over a shoulder. If you were to take the cloth and drape it over your hand, it would fall like if you were to draw your finger, right? Okay. And you put a cloth over it. The cloth will basically create and they all go back to that point. If that makes any sense. Same way if you have a shirt and you come down to kind of where it bends, right? So you can kind of see right? So the folds are going to be where the arm, where the material gets tucked in. So when we go back to Batman here, imagine that there's a finger underneath that shoulder, and it's basically casting these shapes here. I was, they say that drawing, there's a subconscious part of drawing, and I believe that to be true. I mean, there's a part that we intend to draw, and then there's a part of us that we might not necessarily know is in our minds as we're doing it. I was on vacation this week with my family, and I was in this same pose with my daughter. She was riding on top of me, and so I think maybe that kind of inspired this shot. She's 22 years old, though, so it was really weird. It was actually the 2.5-year-old. So, yeah. So there's Batman. Yep. Okay. That's the infinite cape, Batman. His symbol there goes. Oh, sorry. So there's the bicep there, and that's the shoulder under the shadow underneath the bicep. The forearm, he's got the glove here, so I can go black in there. Keep it really kind of vague. Maybe the knee would show up here. This is going to be the shadow of the cape. All right? So it's deliberately kept kind of simple. Wait. And it's better to suggest it than to actually draw it anyway. Okay. All right. Let's finish this off here. I wouldn't suggest necessarily putting it directly on your drawings, unless you have a lot of white out. It's a little tricky. This brush is not ideal. Usually you want to get something that comes to a point. Okay. And you see it's kind of a dry, what we'll call a dry brush. It's not completely loaded with ink. Well, now it is. But when it's not, you can create some nice kind of textures. Haven't done it yet, but so this has a very kind of sketchy kind of quality to it, which I enjoy doing. It's going to be a little rougher than what you'll see printed. That's why the comic books usually take so long when I pencil the work. Very meticulous, and I erase and I redraw things and really get it down to one specific line for everything I'm doing. And since these legs are underneath her, I can actually go all the way to black and just suggest the structure underneath. Okay. All right, so now I've basically what I've called spotted the blacks, all the major shadows, and I can go in and clean this up to help create more of this kind of barrel shape on this thing. I'm going to go in and do this, and again it goes back to this cross hatching. I'm just really trying to create a gray gradient. So like if you had a barrel, like a coffee can, and there's a light over here, this side's going to be darker. So you do something like that. And to make it look more three-dimensional, you can cast that shadow like that. So this is just essentially a coffee can. And basically creating a gradient across it. And I'm going to do it in a way that's very organic, meaning the lines they don't look like they're exactly the same next to each other. They're just kind of free form. And that's because the material is wood. If it were metal, maybe I would make it more mechanical looking. The lines would be much more parallel and crisp. So now I'm just going back in and tightening up some of these lines. Filling in some of the blanks. Bless you. Okay. And so, again, as I'm drawing these figures, the amount of time after the initial structure drawing that you saw and the refinements, and this really is the stuff that, it's part of my style, is the attention to detail, or the little lines that you see like that. It just takes time, and so I can look at this and go like, oh, it'll take me another 2 hours to get it to a certain point that I would feel it was completely finished. And that's why the complex takes so long to draw. So I can do a pretty quick gesture drawing and structure right away, but then it's going in and like doing these final touches of really just pulling it all together and making sure all the shapes and the gradients and the lines are as clean as they can be. As I kind of tighten this up, if you guys have any questions, feel free to ask it. It doesn't necessarily have to be about drawing per se, but or not. Can you have this one? Sure, if everyone else agrees to it. The pencil, how tight are the pencils I give Scott? They tend to be very tight. I want them to be, a lot of times they'll take books and basically reproduce the pencils. And I remember the first time I saw reproduced pencils of John Byrne's work on X-Men. I was just amazed at how tight they were. I really thought they'd be much looser, but he had everything there, and so I've always kind of wanted to emulate that level of tightness in the pencils and really give all the information there. And what Scott brings to the table is sometimes you'll see like a line and maybe a fainter line, and he really figures out what's the best line, what I meant with that line. Or he'll do some things with texture, because there are certain things you can do with ink and a brush that you can't quite capture using a pencil. So a lot of times I'll just draw rocks. If you have like a series of rocks like this, and I'll take the side of the pencil and just kind of Greek in some shapes, right? These are the shadows, right? And so when you go in with ink, you can basically, there's a number of ways you can trap the lines like this, right? Keep it really crisp like that, or you can do a dry brush approach. Where you use the actual hairs of the brush to create texture, right? So there's all these different ways you can interpret that little bit of pencil that I put down. So that's the fun part for him as an inker, I think, is to figure that stuff out. And it's not just rocks that have texture, but metal. Like you'll see a lot of times, you see a little figure. So, the Superman. Okay, so and he'll be standing on like the deck of the Justice League satellite carrier or whatever it is. And sometimes you do shadow and you just basically do something like that. And then to sell it, it's just a like technique, but it's basically like a shiny surface will have ripples. It's basically reflections of light that might be across the ceiling, and so you can just right. So it makes it look like it's like a shiny surface. Does that make sense? You see that? It helps if this pose actually matches the shadow, but you get the idea. Anyway, so we'll go back to this character. I'm just going to fix up a couple things. Now I'm going to use whiteout to kind of clean it up. And this is what I would normally do with a eraser. Do I always start with what? White? The body. The body. Oh, yes. Yes. I do. The torso and the pelvis, that's why I started with that. That's the core of the figure. The limbs can kind of go everywhere and they're going to move in different positions, but where the torso and the pelvis fall on top of one another really solidifies and gives that character mass and weight, is what we call it. Okay? Yes? It's in all of them. So you'll have the same torso and pelvis, but then you might widen it a little bit. So I kind of start with the basic torso and pelvis, and then I'll widen elements based on the character for both male and female characters, based on their physique or build. But you kind of start with the same essential starting points. So you see I'm just drawing in some of the shadows there. This leg is too long. That foot, I guess. Do I usually draw all my shadows in? Oh, when I pencil? Yeah. I mean, if you look at some, like there's a Hush Unwrapped book, or I put up pencils online, I fill it in. I think it looks nicer. I mean, you don't have to. You can just draw like an X. If you write an X in a shape, that means fill it in with black. But a lot of times it's hard to tell if it's going to look right with the shadows where you put X's, and so I'll go ahead and put that in with the side of the pencil. This is rapidograph ink. It's permanent ink, and I like it because it has a nozzle and you can pour it directly onto the drawing. I tend to work on an angled table, and so if you have an ink bottle, like it's going to slide off the table or spill out, or I'll knock it over. This tends to be also very portable, and it has a real nice consistency and a level of opaqueness. Once you get into inking, you'll find that all these different companies, from Pelican ink to, there's many, but they all have a different quality to them, and you just have to experiment with what you like. Some are more viscous and harder to fill in large areas, but others are more liquid and very easy to fill in areas, but they tend not to be as opaque, and so they don't give you the true blacks that you might necessarily want. This pen I'm using now is what? I'm not sure if I heard the question. Oh, I usually don't ink my own work. Scott uses a Cocoa pen. Those are things like the old, during the Revolutionary War, they would have these things with, little nibs like that. And it's basically a piece of metal. If you zoom in here. And basically the ink gets stuck in between these two little metal prongs, and as you apply pressure, the prongs separate. And through the power of, I think, water tension, the ink basically stays connected to the metal prongs, and you can draw like a thicker line. So you can, with one throw of the hand, you can draw a line that looks like that, right? And so it's super nice when you're doing a lot of gradients, because you can do this in 3 quick strokes as opposed to using a magic marker and having to do multiple strokes and also having it look kind of rough, right? But it's a lot easier to use a marker, and so I never did enough inking, so I used to ink with a Croco, but now I just use a marker. And this is it's a Micron Pigma marker, and it basically, it's permanent ink, and they're sold at most art stores. So, does anyone have any more paper? Any more backing boards? Okay. All right, so that was... Okay. Sorry, couldn't really make that out. What was it? How do I balance the muscularity of Batman with... Yeah, I couldn't... Oh yeah, I don't know, I've drawn some pretty bulky Wonder Woman shots. I think there's a shot of like Psylocke I did from like the 90s where she's in a swimsuit, she's got her arms up like this, and she's got huge guns, and I'm like, wow, that didn't quite come out the way I wanted, but I'm not afraid to put a little bit of muscle on like a character like Wonder Woman. I think it makes a lot of sense, and you just gotta make sure not to make the necks look too buff. I think that's the secret, right? If you don't really, if the necks are looking a little too thick, I think that's where you start losing some of that femininity. But it's actually interesting with Wonder Woman. You can actually put a lot of mass on her and kind of get away with it, and people don't necessarily see that you've actually given her a lot of body mass. So this is one. I'm just going to do a couple quick headshots in the remaining amount of time so we have more than one image. That went very fast. I literally thought we had 30 minutes left and we have like 5. Is there anything going on after this? Is there another panel? Signing? Right, we can push that back a little bit, right? So, all right, hold on. I'm going to try to do a couple more. So, okay, very quickly. If you're drawing ahead, let's do Wonder Woman since we talked about it. Again, just make sure that the neck is not too thick. Here's the egg, here's the neck, it's offset. This line, that's where the ear comes. Go from the ear to the eyes, down here to the nose, down here to the mouth. There you go. The star goes right here, okay? Yes? How do we hire new writers? I would say that's a very tough thing to do because it's a lot easier to show someone your art samples and they can take a quick look at it and they can tell literally from one page of that if you have the chops to get professional work. With writing, you kind of have to read the whole story, right? You have to read like 20 pages of script to see if the writer set up a story that basically had a payoff. So it's a lot harder. I would actually suggest in this day and age, you don't need to wait to hear from DC to be validated, or any company to be validated as a writer. You can find creators online, you can find artists on DeviantArt.com, and you can start doing comic books on your own without a publisher and have them quote unquote published online, and really kind of learn how to work with other people and learn how to collaborate. And if you do that enough, you will find a following, and if you have a following, people will hire you because they want to sell comic books. So that's what I would do. I broke in by basically doing a lot of sample pages and mailing them off to editors, and I got very few responses, but and that was very tedious. I mean, it was like $90 every time I would go to the Xerox store to make photocopies, and I'd have to make a set for every editor from every company I knew of, and I would mail them out, and then basically have to wait weeks to get a reply, if I got a reply at all. Now you can just email people, so you have incredible ease of access, but the problem is everyone has that same ease of access, so in a way they're less likely to look at it. So I wouldn't wait to hear back from the big companies. If you want to be a writer, start writing, and if you have good writing, people will want to work with you, and if people want to work with you, you'll produce great stuff, and you'll eventually get hired or be given assignments of things that you want to do. Right? Sure. Oh yeah, sure. I don't look back on a lot of stuff. I actually look back on a lot of my work here at conventions when people bring it up for me to sign it. I don't have a lot of that stuff available. And it's like, if you guys keep pictures of yourself from like the 90s or 80s, depending on how old you are, you look back on those and you go like, oh, what was I thinking in terms of what I was wearing, or that's very much what I kind of experience when I see the artwork from that era. And even things I thought I really did well or kind of nailed, poses, you look at it now and go like, oh boy, that head looks really small, or, the cross-hatching is just way too over the top. So it's always, you're always going to have that kind of nostalgic look. If you look back on anything, any photo of yourself, you're just going to go like that. You're going to see like how your tastes have changed and how your aesthetic has changed because of that. So. Try and make lemon with lemonades here. This brush is really not helping me out, so I'm trying to kind of just draw the shadows in as opposed to. I have the design of the costume, like the one that was part of the New 52 before they started production on Superman. I don't know if they were influenced by it. I haven't asked Zack Snyder that directly, but I know that he was looking at a lot of the comic book work, and he's specifically called out the work I did, although the work I did was on For Tomorrow, and that didn't have the new costume. He is a fan of comic books, and I think he is inspired by the stuff that's produced in the comics, so it wouldn't surprise me. But that design predated the New 52 by at least a year, I think. Even like the Flash TV show, I thought they were somewhat influenced by the New 52 design a bit. I think they take from it what they need. Whenever you're going into a new medium, whether it's whether you're going into film or TV, some things are going to look good on a comic book page, but might not look good in real life. Oh, the phone. Sorry. Okay. All right. Right. No, it's okay. If it was someone older, I would have been like, okay, security. Maybe she just wanted a horsey ride or something. I don't know. Anyway, okay, so You have a question? Can someone closer repeat that? Amplify it? Oh, what made me become a comic book artist? You know what? I just really loved comic books from when I was just a little kid. There wasn't a lot of, if you were into fantasy or adventure or science fiction, there wasn't Star Wars. There wasn't all these cartoon shows. There was nothing really. It was like a lot of movies with giant insects, Frankenstein, that kind of stuff. And I just loved these incredible stories, and in the world of comic books, you could do these amazing cosmic battles, or characters that could fly and melt walls with their eyes, and all these really cool things that you could not find on TV or in film. And so I just like that. And so when you have a lot of downtime and you're trying to create cool stories, the best way to do that was just sit around and kind of draw them. And so that's what I did. I just drew a lot as a kid, and I really looked at comic books, I think, the same way people today look at the big summer tentpole movies for inspiration. But literally, my friends and I would go to church, and then after service or whatever, we'd go to one of the classrooms and just sit around and make up our own stories and write the roster of the X-Men and the Avengers and who would fight who and how the fights would go, and start drawing some of that stuff. And it was just we didn't have video games to distract us, so that was what we did instead. How many hours a day do I dedicate to drawing? So this week I dedicated 0 drawings to drawing, and you're seeing the payoff of that dedication. It's a little bit of a struggle today. But normally I will, depends on the day, but as co-publisher, I'll go up to Burbank from San Diego. I wake up at 5 in the morning. I'm on the 6:45 train. I get in the office at 9:30, and I'm in the office from 9:30 to 4 o'clock, and that's just all business stuff. It's like meetings about marketing plans, what storylines we're going to run, what kind of paper, who's going to publish our books, all that kind of stuff. And then I get home around 8 o'clock and have dinner with the family, and I'll just hang out for a while. And then usually around 10:30 or 11, I'll draw till about 3, 5 minutes. So I'll draw till like 3 in the morning, so like 5 hours to 8 hours a day, The days I go up to Burbank makes it a little bit harder. My influence as a kid would be all the real popular ones. I bought my comic books at like 7-Eleven. I didn't go to a comic book shop because I didn't know where one existed because there was no Google Maps at the time. So, like George Perez, Frank Miller, John Byrne, that kind of thing. My favorite character as a kid, I was a real, I loved Superman and Batman when I was like 8 or 9, but then when I became a teenager, I was just really into the X-Men and some of the Marvel stuff. So those were probably my favorite at the time. And so when I got into comics, I really wanted to work at Marvel and then work on the X-Men just because that was really kind of like my dream aspiration or whatever. But the favorite to draw, I would say, it really depends. When you draw too much of one thing, it just gets very boring. But I would say that Batman is a lot of fun to draw. But I like drawing Batman with a character like Nightwing or Robin next to him because what it basically does is it gives you an incredible contrast. So you're not just drawing one type of note. You're not just drawing a dark, somber, hulking character all the time. You're drawing like a dark character like Batman, but you get to draw this kind of lighthearted Robin character next to him, and so that's kind of fun having that contrast. So you're not just exercising one muscle constantly. I draw mostly on paper, like what you're seeing now, obviously not with ink. But I'll do like a lot of my color concept work will be done on the Cintiq. It's basically a computer screen that you can draw on top of. And you know, what I like about it is you can add a color and then you can instantly undo it, or you can undo 15 steps of color work that you've done. So it gives you a lot of freedom and options. So with this, I know I've got this awful brush I can use, so I'm gonna basically break out the shapes, right? Can you see that? All right.
What is your opinion on light boxes?
My opinion on light boxes. I use light boxes. Yeah, they're good for a couple things. If you want to draw a motorcycle, like Black Canary's riding on All-Star Batman or Robin, I went and bought an actual Harley model that I wanted, and I basically took photographs, and I imported them to Photoshop, and then I used a lens to kind of stretch them based on the perspective and the angle I wanted. I print those out in high contrast, and then I would light box that on. But you can't light box and copy every little detail, because then it looks like a light box drawing. So you have to almost kind of apply your own filter and simplify reality so that it matches the level of detail that you give to the rest of the world, you know, to your buildings and your cars. So it's useful in that respect. But in terms of figure work, the stuff I do is so exaggerated, it doesn't really make sense to light box a figure. It's a lot easier. I like to look at reference and then extrapolate it into a style that works, but light boxing figures, you'll find that the heads are much larger and the bodies are a lot shorter than the way we draw them in comic books. Will I do a podcast with David Cho? Yeah, eventually, you know. David is a good friend of mine, and he's like always on the road though, and so we're gonna figure out a time to do that. What was it like working with Chris Claremont back in the day? It was nerve-wracking, I'll tell you. I remember, I wish they had texting back then, because that's the only way I would have communicated with Chris Claremont, because, you know, imagine you're a fan of a book and you get hired to draw that book, and now you're going to call up the creator and talk to him on the phone, and that's what I was doing. I remember, you know, like literally rehearsing in my head what I was going to say to Chris. Like, I didn't want to be too much of a fanboy and go like, oh, you remember this scene, I love that, and, you know. But at the same time, I wanted to find out like what was Wolverine's real origin and all this kind of fanboy kind of stuff. And I just remember calling him up and trying to be like all nonchalant, like, oh, hey, like I call up, you know, comic book creators all the time, and it's just really an awkward, nerve-wracking experience. But he was very kind, and he loves to talk about the characters. And so, you know, he basically said, look, tell me what you want. What you like. What do you like drawing? And like, what characters do you like? I like Captain America. I like Black Widow. I like World War II. He said, great. We'll do a story about Captain America, Wolverine, Black Widow set in World War II, and he came up with the Madripoor storyline, which was I think 268. And so it was really cool. But again, I didn't want to constantly call him because, like, literally it'd be like, how many days have passed since I called Chris? Okay, it's too soon. He'll think I'm stalking him or I love him. I'll wait 2 more days and call nonchalantly an hour. He might be eating lunch, and that way I'll just leave a message like, I'm not too desperate, maybe he'll call me back, right? And so there's a lot of that going on. But today, it'd be easy because I would just text him and it'd be like, no pressure or whatever. It'd be like super chill and cool about it. Anyway, you do have another panel. Okay, so enlighten me. All right, I'm just going to fill out this thing here and show one last little technique. Did they give out tickets? Do you guys have anything that has numbers or anything like that? No. Driver's license. Okay, here's what we're going to do. If someone has a birthday today and they can prove it by showing a driver's license. Bachelor party? What are you doing here? You know, this is Vegas, Las Vegas. I do understand. Yeah, exactly. You guys made the wrong turn.
Say birthday.
What if your birthday's next week?
We
got the same birthday?
No one's birthday's today? All right. Oh, that guy there? We have 2 people? 1 person? This is how you do very quick rain and stormy clouds. I'm almost done, Johnny. Be like, almost done. Okay. All right, so then if someone has a, so we have 1 winner? No, 2. How many do we have? Okay. Anyway, so that's it. I'm sorry it took so long, guys, but thank you for coming.